Oh my god, this guitar track is so fucking tacky. But yo, what's up guys? How are we all doing today? I hope you all are having a nice evening. Welcome to the very first episode of Forewarnings with Fever Reaver. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of games that I've already played and a couple of games that I haven't played. We're also going to have a little special feature. I know I said it was going to be mainly games, but I think I have discovered something else that I would like to talk about briefly. So let's just go ahead and get this shit started. We're actually going to start right off the bat with a game very near and dear to my heart, Undertale. Now, I played Undertale a few weeks ago. Game was alright. So it's basically a puzzle RPG, you know? Like, I hesitate to call it an RPG because it kind of like masquerades as one, but I feel like it's really much more of a puzzle game. In this game, you play as a young child dropped into a world full of monsters, and you have to navigate your way through this crazy area of kooky characters, harmful and harmless, all the same. Now, I think that definitely the strongest suit of this game is its writing and its characters. Like, many of the characters, I found myself, to immediately take to them, save for a very small handful. Particularly towards the end of the game, like I feel like a lot of the earlier characters are much stronger as far as like their writing and just how much they appeal to me in general. Aside from that though, one of the main problems with Undertale, in my opinion, is that it falls into the same trap that a lot of other like indie RPGs, indie games in general tend to fall into, in the sense that since the development team is so small, in the case of this game being made by one person, it has a very strong artistic vision, but there are a couple of different aspects of the game that could have used a little more refining, or maybe even just a second voice. You'll find after, like, I feel like one of my main mistakes was playing this game all in one sitting. If I had broken it up a little more, the combat and the puzzles probably wouldn't have seemed quite so monotonous. But since I did play this game entirely in one setting by the time the game was about to be over, the bullet hell segments were making me want to tear my fucking hair out, no matter how much variation they had. Because they all essentially boil down to the same thing, which is dodging bullets. Aside from that, a lot of the puzzles are kind of counterintuitive, especially like some of the dialogue puzzles. But they're not really like too hard to figure out. Now, what I wasn't a fan of as far as dialogue puzzles go are some of the boss battles, because it's like you go into a lot of these boss battles and over time you kind of figure out that it's like it follows the same formula of just stay alive as long as you possibly can and eventually something's gonna fucking happen. But the means to make that happen aren't always so clear. Like, you're basically just left to try every option, and every option and every combination. Another big issue with Undertale is that it does seem to kind of fall apart as far as its neutral ending goes. Now, I say neutral because a lot of people consider the ending where you complete the game without killing any enemies as the true ending. Now, I don't feel like it's quite fair to only base Undertale based off of the true ending and the genocide ending. The endings are split into 3 different categories. The first one being if you kill 0 enemies. The second category being the neutral ending, which is if you kill anywhere from 1 enemy or all but 1 enemy. And the final category being where you kill every single enemy that you come into contact with. Now, one of the things that I have the biggest problem with is that since the neutral ending has such a broad definition, it is the ending that 99% of your players are going to get on their first playthrough. Now, if that's the case, if that's the ending that 99% of your characters are going to get on, or of your players are going to get on the first playthrough, I feel like it needs to be bolstered up a little bit. Compared to the pacifist, there we go. Compared to the pacifist ending and compared to the genocide endings, it leaves a lot to be desired. The game essentially wraps up with no real conclusion. There are a lot of like kind of loose ends that just kind of like filter out there, and you don't get to see what happens with some of these characters that have been alluded to but not examined. Overall, I'd probably give Undertale somewhere in the range of like a 7 out of 10. It was a pretty good game. I feel like it's kind of overrated, but that's just like my opinion, man. I'm also not a fan of bullet hell, so my opinion is probably also slightly skewed compared to a lot of fans of Undertale who like I haven't met like a ton of Undertale fans, but it seems kind of strange how a lot of the ones that I just see on the internet are also fans of series like Toho or I don't fucking remember how to pronounce it, but bullet hell games. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and move on to another game that is very near and dear to my heart, XCOM 2. XCOM 2 is a turn-based strategy game. I was a huge fan of Enemy Unknown. This game is made by 2K Games and Firaxis, also known for the Civilization series. Honestly, I feel like XCOM 2 expanded in the raw gameplay elements in almost every manner positively. They incorporated a lot of the elements that were previously available in DLCs for XCOM Enemy Unknown smartly into the classes in XCOM 2. They found a good way to merge existing DLC content into a new game without copy-pasting assets. As far as the combat goes, it's all been tuned up a little bit. It's refined. It's also a lot more aggressive. It's not quite as monotonous as the constant Overwatch spam of the last game, where the best way to play was to just be hyper-defensive. Aside from that, the strategy layer of the game, the part of the game that isn't a turn-based strategy game, has also been improved upon pretty significantly. There's a lot more to do as far as like managing your base and managing where your base flies around the map. It's a lot more fun than just launching satellites at the end of every month. It feels a little more connected, which is ironic considering I just said we weren't using satellites. Anyway, though, we're on to yet our next game, Firewatch. Now, Firewatch is a single-player, story-driven adventure game. I feel like that would be the best way to describe it. It's about a man whose wife is suffering from dementia. To escape his problems, he retreats to, the Wyoming wilderness. Now, Firewatch is good for what it tries to do. Firewatch tells a story that is interesting and engaging, especially like throughout the beginning and the middle. Now, again, like we were just talking about with Undertale, the game kind of falls apart in the end. Like, the ending isn't like super satisfying to me. But then again, you know, it's a simple ending for minimal effort. So that's why I feel like it pays off like what it asks for. Or what you ask of it. At $20, I feel like this game is like a bit overpriced. But if you're really into like this style of game, it'll be right up your alley. One of the biggest issues for me is that throughout the course of the game, there are several allusions to mysterious things happening in the woods. And the least mysterious thing is what the truth actually turns out to be. I almost wish that we did see like some sort of payoff for this government university research campsite thing that we found out in the woods. I almost wish that someone was trying to like kill us out in the woods instead of just some fucking crazy dude out there. Personally, I'd give Firewatch about a 6 out of 10. I mean, it's okay, like I said. It accomplishes what you ask of it, but not much more and not much less. So now we are on to our next. This is a good one. This is the special feature. This is actually not a video game, but a little piece of video game culture. I decided that I would touch upon one of the greatest voices of our generation, and you might know him. His name is PewDiePie. Now, I was just fucking around on YouTube whenever I saw this shit. This right here, it's called I'm Not Crazy. It's featuring our main Swede, PewDiePie. The premise is that PewDiePie plays video games in real life, set up with extras and other actors in these environments, and it's supposed to replicate different horror games. This one that we have on the screen over here is replicating Outlast, and for those of you that don't know, it takes place entirely inside of an insane asylum. And it's almost kind of strange because the acting feels very forced, but it doesn't feel like PewDiePie is really forcing it. Like I feel like he's like still the same, but it just feels really fucking tacky. Like whenever you examine all these other extras and the actors and everything all around him. Like, it's not in this video, but the extras are all wearing, like, tattered rags and clothes and everything. But you can see that one of the girls is wearing, like, a high-end, like, high-fat... I mean, it's not, like, super great. It's probably from, like, Victoria's Secret or something. But she's wearing, like, a brand new neon pink bra, like, underneath the tattered rags. And it just feels, like, really half-assed and hammy. This right here is actually part of YouTube Red's new subscription program, which I don't know how the fuck they expect anyone to pay for this shit, considering that this is like what me and my friends would make videos of when I was 10 years old. Yeah, and as you're going to see on the screen over here, I'll just turn this up for you a little bit. This right here is exactly what I mean about these actors just doing shit that's like really sounding forced as fuck. I wish that they almost took this in a different direction because you can tell that they tried to incorporate like some humor elements into it, particularly humor elements that PewDiePie's fans would enjoy. I don't know if we'll get to see it before I'm done talking about it, but Mr. Chair makes an appearance if any of you guys have watched his videos. Pretty dank meme that PewDiePie created there. I almost feel like it would have been a lot more entertaining if they went like a different route with it, where they instead like removed those like humor elements and removed like some of this other shit. Maybe even like getting rid of this fucking like chest thing that he has, so that way he can have a face cam while he's walking around. Like I'm not a fan of that either. I almost wish that they just went all out and just tried to scare the shit out of this guy, because that is like where, you know, it's like the most entertaining shit is whenever someone's like genuinely frightened. But it's like, you know, PewDiePie, it's like his whole shtick is to like just kind of like yell and overreact. Like, I don't think that at any point during this he was scared, especially since the extras were like giggling and laughing. Because, ha ha ha, we get to be in video, PewDiePie. Alright, so that about wraps up our first section of reviews. Pretty soon we're going to be moving on to other games that are coming up. I haven't played these ones though, so your mileage may vary, but this is Fever's Forewarnings. Look the fuck out, guys. Save your money. Watch that wallet. Yeah. Alright, so first one that we have for our upcoming games is going to be Tom Clancy's The Division. Now, this has been, you know, a real hot button game ever since it was announced, like, fucking a million years ago. As with most Ubisoft games, it gets announced and then delayed and then changed and then announced again and then delayed and then changed. But pretty consistently, Division has made a shooter RPG, like a third-person shooter RPG. Basically, like, from everything I've seen from this game, the most apt way to describe it is like Destiny, but with even less enemy and environment variety. In most of the Division, you're just running around like these same, like, beat up, burnt down, fucked up areas of New York. It's just snowing all the time. I think that there's like some sort of reason for that, but I don't remember. Whereas, you know, in other games, like, I feel like that's the only saving grace that Destiny really had, was just that you got to see all this like science fantasy kind of stuff. Something that I am a fan of Division though is that it does seem to be a lot more story driven than Destiny. Destiny was severely lacking in that area. But one of the major issues with me is that it doesn't, like, the raw gunplay of Destiny is what makes that game playable. Like, if the shooting was shit, Destiny would be unplayable for me. Bungie has a real nice lock on what exactly they want to do in a game. They have a real nice lock on how to keep a game, like, thoroughly paced. Like, they know how to make shooting stay interesting for over 20 hours, basically. I feel like a lot of that is lacking in the Division. The combat is pretty stiff. Being a cover shooter, it basically puts you against, like, certain walls, and you're just shooting at, you know, essentially wooden targets that just pop out every now and then and shoot you from behind the cover. Something else that I think is severely lacking is the number of aggressive options. Now, the most aggressive options you have actually comes from your utility. There's so many like gadgets and everything in this game, which is fun, admittedly, but it feels kind of cheap almost. Um, like I wish that they would have just focused more on like the raw combat aspect of it instead of trying to bog it down with all sorts of items and equipment and loot and all sorts of shit like this. It's like let's just keep it leveled. Something else that always has bugged me about the Division ever since it was announced is that, yet again, it is another step away from what Tom Clancy was all about. We always saw, like, the older Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six games, the idea was that it was always on, like, the cutting edge of technology. But this is taking it, like, a bit further than I think was necessary. This is, like, a technology creep that started a while ago. Even if they even dialed it back just a little bit to things that actually like existed in an experimental stage today. Like I feel like that was always what Tom Clancy had going for it, but it's like now they are kind of in between. Like, do we want to like stay realistic or do we want to just like appeal as like a more arcadey kind of game? They're just kind of mixed up somewhere in the middle. They're definitely moving like more and more over to the other end of the spectrum. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I probably will play The Division whenever it comes out, so that way I can give you guys a more informed opinion about it. It looks mildly fun. Like, I enjoy Destiny, and I'm trying to try like more new shit lately anyway, so there's not really anything else I'm excited about, so The Division will have to do. Alright guys, and now we are going to move on to the final piece of content that we have for the first episode of Forewarnings with Fever Reaver, and that is Hitman 6, or Hitman 2016, or Hitman, since everything has to be a fucking reboot these days. Anyway, let's go ahead and pull this video up. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hitman is a third-person stealth game. You control Agent 47, you want to go around and assassinate motherfuckers. You are Hitman. One of the immediate issues that I've had already, just based off of what I've seen in Hitman 6, is that the game is more like Absolution than Blood Money. As far as forced shootout segments, the first two games had like a handful here and there. In the third game, Blood Money had almost none of them. Like, I don't think you had to kill anyone except for your target and people, like, in the epilogue thing or whatever. But then the next game in the series after Hitman 6, Hitman Absolution, we saw a huge departure from this style. There was a lot more focus on the action, and one of the other shitty things about it is that it was very linear. You were very railroaded. It was basically just running down corridors, and the only areas where you had any sort of flexibility were the actual areas where you could assassinate the target, which was... Some of them it was like the entire level, other areas it was like a very small part of a bigger level. I've also seen that the instinct ability returns, which is not necessary to be used, but it does exist in the game. It gives you all sorts of powers, to compensate for players who want to, have that more actiony, like the bullet time and the mark and execute and all sorts of things like that. One of the other biggest issues, though, one of my biggest issues with Absolution was that it was way too easy to get out of a shitty situation. It was way too easy. Modern stealth games seem to suffer from this same pitfall, like just across the board. It started several years ago with one of my favorite series, Splinter Cell, and Splinter Cell Conviction moves towards this like more action-oriented thing. That was, I still enjoyed Splinter Cell Conviction very much, but getting caught was like never a big deal, in which case why bother with the stealth aspect? You might as well just run in, and then if you get into a shitty spot, just hide behind a wall, and enemies just seem to forget that you existed. Absolution was the same way. Metal Gear Solid 5 was also the same way. And it looks like Hitman 6 is going to be yet another one in that long line of progressively easier stealth games. Oh, and Thief. Thief is another fucking... the reboot, that is. Well, okay guys. That went a bit smoother than expected. We had a few hitches, a few rough spots. We're still trying to kind of find our footing. I am planning to have on guests in the future. Let me know for sure if you know, have anyone in particular you would like to see on the show. Within reason, guys. I'm pretty sure we couldn't get PewDiePie on to explain what the fuck he was thinking when he agreed to do this live action video game shit. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. All of you watching live, you can catch the VOD on YouTube. All of you watching on YouTube, you can catch it live on twitch.tv/Fever Reaver. Like my Facebook page at Fever Reaver Streams. Or follow me on Twitter at Fever Reaver. Join my Steam group, Fever Reaver Streams. I have Snapchat and Instagram at Fever_Reaver if you want to hit me up on either of those. But until next time, thank you all for watching.
There is a world beyond yours. Beyond nations, justice, ethics. It never sleeps. It exists everywhere. And once you enter, there is no going back. You are Agent 47, the world's premier assassin. You can get to anyone, anywhere on the globe. No target is safe. To the public, Viktor Novikov is a well-known oligarch.